Hey, welcome back, everybody. We're riding along on the Rad Life with our resident Raad Ghantous, our community storyteller, who today apparently is going to have the tables turned on him with his friend and sometime co-host, Chef Pascal. Welcome, gentlemen.
Hey, good to see you all.
Yeah, hey everybody. You're not seeing. This is not a case of Zoom where the image is mirrored, because I usually sit in that chair.
Yeah, why are you sitting on the wrong
Right?
side?
Pascal sits in here when he was being interviewed, and then we kind of tag team a guest when we co-hosted. The reason I'm sitting over here is because, you know who? Frenchie over there.
Frenchie, is that what we call him here?
Hey, you're the guest. Don't talk to me.
I'm just setting up the stage.
He's
here,
in
okay?
control today.
I'm just setting up the stage. Okay. I am going to get 2 words in and then I'm handing it over. But basically, he said, well, you know, people are saying, who's this guy, Raad? Which, you know, I don't know how to take that. After 7 years of being on the air, I guess I don't know. I don't know how to take that. So
He's still a mystery to us.
So he said, Mr. Tour now? What are you with the names, little labels?
Mr. Tour.
So he said, hey, I think you need to be interviewed. So he's flipping the tables on me
Because
and
even
putting me in the hot seat.
even me, I want to learn more about you because, you know, what should be your course when I don't know who you are?
But don't you know that's the trick? When you're the host, you're the one hiding. You're just like the guy behind the camera. You're right.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. But I said yes. I said, you know, I have no idea. He wouldn't share with me what questions he was going to ask
We
me.
solicited some.
I told him I will answer what I can, and if it, if it's going to complicate situations or name names or
Put you in peril.
put some people in peril, I will probably take the fifth, but otherwise I will answer.
I think we have a fifth in the room here if you want one.
You have a fifth? Says the Irishman in the room. 3 guys walk into the room, and the one talking about the fifth is the Irishman.
And I want to say, if some people who are listening and think that they wanted to know more, even after the show,
they can tweet.
Email or call on the next show.
No.
To know
If
more.
anybody wants to know more, they need to call it during the show. I'm not making myself available for more digging after the show.
So we do have a
This is
hotline set up.
I'm going to need therapy.
I have no control yet.
So we
So
did.
I relinquish the control. But before I do,
Yeah.
I'd like to say that this episode is brought to you by Chef Pascal Oulat's artisanal coffee. You should get from pascalcuisine.com/coffee, or you can also pair it with the chocolate coffee, okay, which I'm going to be having one of these. So if I chew on these very nervously, you'll know that I don't want to answer the question, right? But it's brought to you by that. So check out Pascal's stuff. We usually don't promote products, but I've tried this and it's actually very good. Make sure you get the caffeinated coffee, though, because he gave me a bag of decaffeinated, and I said, you know, do
You're
I
up all
look like
night.
a decaffeinated kind of guy? Yes, I had decaffeinated coffee, and I was up all night, honestly.
It's the best decaf you can
It was good decaf, but it's it's okay for a night, but I'm not a decaf guy usually.
I'm going to talk about coffee later.
Oh, you're going to take about coffee?
Yeah, but
Like I said, I have no clue what he's planning this show.
Can I start by asking one question? We crowdsourced. What would you want to know about Raad?
You crowdsourced?
We did. We put messages out.
By the way, do you know that that's how we came up with the name for the show, right?
Yeah,
We
exactly.
crowdsourced the name 9 years ago.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But we want to know, so.
So you guys crowdsourced questions.
Yeah.
Okay.
And one question that came up, which I never thought about, is the name. It looks like it's Rad, but it's pronounced Raad. Where does that name come from?
Exactly.
Wow. You're really starting at the beginning.
Yeah.
Okay. Fair enough. The name actually is a functioning word in the Arabic language. My mom was Iraqi Lebanese, God rest her soul, and my dad was Palestinian, born in Haifa when it was still Palestine, for a state of Israel was formed. And the name is it's an Arabic word, like I said, it's a functioning word in the Arabic language, and it actually means, this is going to get worse as I go, okay?
Okay.
It means thunder.
Thunder. Ooh.
Okay.
Mr. Thunder.
Or as the Turks told me in my 2 weeks of being in Turkey, in Turkish it's şimşek. So it's even worse in Turkish, right? It sounds like something that's an attack. But it means thunder. And when you say thunder and lightning, you say Raad and Barq. Barq is the lightning. So anybody who speaks Arabic will confirm that. It also happens to be a name that is common in certain parts of the Middle East. Iraq, there's a lot like for boys, name for boys. Not to be confused with Raed, which is like lieutenant or leader, and that's spelled a little bit differently. Some people will want to call me Raed. It's actually Raad, and there's sort of like a slight, like in French, you have like a little pause between letters.
Right.
Raad, yeah. And but everybody wants to call me Rad, and I gave up. And when we did the show, actually, is when I finally said, "Okay, fine, I give up.
Well,
We're going to call it the Rad Life."
Because in Southern California, rad means radical.
Well,
cool,
and I live in
dude.
San Clemente, and I don't surf, and so I
Right.
feel a little bit of a fraud because everybody says "rad."
He's
for
pretty
surfing.
rad, actually. For
Pretty
me.
rad.
So anyway, we ended up using it that way, and I like it. It's different. The only thing I don't like is when at Starbucks they insist on calling me Rodney for some reason,
Okay.
and my cups say Rodney. I return them.
Because you're cute.
I look. Do I look like a Rodney? I don't
You-
think I look
yeah,
like a
yeah,
Rodney.
yeah.
Oh, don't.
Especially when
You look
don't
like-
start
when
with
you-
me,
when
Pascal.
You look like
smile.
thunder to me.
So that's what the word means. It means thunder, and it's
All right,
Still,
so-
it's not a dead language. It's used
Now,
in Arabic.
now we already know a bit of the origin of your name. I wanted to know, is it why you're really into culture because of your origins? Because
It's a very good question. I think in part yes, because excuse me, you know this as well because you are from a certain particular part of France, and there in France even there's little subcultures depending on the region, right?
Yeah.
Brittany, Normandy, so it's different. So yeah, I think if you're born in the I mean, I was born in Iraq. I grew up in Iraq, in Abu Dhabi, when there was nothing. We were on a construction camp actually, because my dad is a civil engineer, and you went where the work was. And at that time, those were developing countries that needed that kind of skill set, and they were building like the first airport and the infrastructure bridge in Abu Dhabi, sorry. And we literally lived on a construction camp, and my mom had a little VW bug, and she would drive out to the, I think, Spinneys, for those who know Spinneys, shopping centers, like it's a British shopping center, 20 minutes, 30 minutes away on dirt roads
Yeah.
to get like, jambon for ham, and you could actually buy ham in a Muslim country. And then we went to Kuwait in 71. So I think when you grow up in different areas of the world that have multiple ethnical, cultural
And they're
differences.
so close to each other.
They're very
they
close to each
still are
other.
different.
Right. I think in the United States, the equivalent to it would be like I spent 2-3 years in Atlanta. Atlanta is not necessarily the South, but it is South enough in comparison to, like, for example, Southern California or the Midwest, like I have family in Chicago. There are certain regional areas in the United States that have certain nuances that are different from pronunciations and accents even. Like if you could go to Boston, there's certain accent.
Sure.
So in the Middle East, in Europe, those countries are so close to each other that you have no really choice but to be exposed by those
Those are
things.
old cultures. In the U.S., there are cultures from immigration. That's really
Well,
changed.
I think yes and no. To be honest with you, I think there's some people that even under the guise of we are all Americans, that still hold some pride in their cultural background. I mean, Irish, French, even like Italians, Polish, Dutch, and again, it may be based on the immigration movements that came in, like the cycles that came in. But I think we also, the other thing too is a lot of people that lived in that part of the world where I grew up, we didn't like stay for summer in Kuwait, for example. So we also were fortunate enough to be able to travel, and whether it was by car to go see my grandparents in Iraq, or eventually as we got a little bit better financially to go to, spend summer with my uncles in England, for example. And of course, you're on your way, you stop in places like Italy. I remember going on a trip with my parents in Italy. So your exposure to stuff is more, and there's no master plan. It just happens that way if you are in a certain economic level. But even if you're not, you are exposed to different things by just virtue of travel, proximity.
That's probably why European culture or personal experience is broader in Europe than here, because we travel so much and we discover every other country's
Yeah,
culture and
yeah.
habits and food too in the same
I
thing.
think so, and I think there's a pride of place, a pride of where you come from, but there's also a pride of being exposed and knowledgeable, and people speak multiple languages. Part of it is necessity. Part of it is economic viability. Like you speak multiple languages.
How many languages do you speak?
I speak Arabic and English to where I don't ever remember not speaking one or the other. Okay, because my father also went to an American university in Beirut, and it was a Jesuit school. And he also, so to kind of wrap up what you had asked just a minute ago before I do this, is part of his things that he enjoyed was history, was archaeology, was, he's an engineer, so there was a bit of that. It was also sort of like built archaeology, right? But history, he was a huge history buff. There was, theology that he was interested in. So when you grow up, I'm Greek Orthodox on my father's side, Catholic on my mother's side. You're growing up in a Muslim country. You have other religions around you. At one point, there were Arab Jews, Arab Muslims, Arab Christians living right next to each other, right? Baha'is in Iran, right? Sephardics, those are all those religions kind of
Did
originate
you
from
not
that
get
part of the world.
confused when you go either to a temple or a church or that
Well, in
kind
some cases you can't. Like if you're not Muslim, for example, you can't enter during a prayer time, but you can go into a mosque when it's not. It's sort of like the Mormon temples here. Like if you're not Mormon, you can't go in after it's consecrated. So I didn't feel confused because I'll tell you what, the thing that was very interesting for me growing up in that environment, and people will ask me this all the time, like, you grew up in a Muslim country and you were Christian, didn't you feel that you were discriminated against or anything like that? Absolutely not, not even in the slightest. Now, the interesting thing is, and this is sort of why the sort of a reflection on the sad conditions that we are having here, and maybe in some other European countries too, is there's a lot more in common between these religions.
Totally.
Living a life of a good life, being of service, helping thy neighbor, other than the basics, don't kill and all that stuff. But like there's a universality to what most of these religions, at least in their pure form. Now, if they start becoming, maligned or interpreted by this guy and that guy for their own personal gain or political ambitions or whatever, then it becomes a different story. But the basics of all these religions are clearly the same.
Yeah.
And so, no, I never got confused. In fact, I enjoyed it. I mean, I have a very good friend of mine from high school where every Christmas, the tradition was, he was Muslim, tradition is every Christmas he was at our house. And during the Eid Iftar after Ramadan, I was at their house. And there was never an issue. In fact, you found yourself in a position where you felt like your life was richer because you were exposed to all this stuff. You were welcomed into all of this stuff to learn. I think the saddest thing on the planet is when you absolutely reject learning more about things. And I think what happens as a direct result of that, and you see it every day sadly, is that you become victim to fear of what you don't know.
But this is why you travel a lot. So your mind is more open.
I don't travel as much as I want to travel, to
No,
be
but
honest with you. But yes, I do.
You did.
Yeah, I do. And I'll tell you, I think you're referring something to about the trip that I just did in Turkey. For 2 weeks, I was
Well,
in
I
Turkey.
don't know if that was really cultural, but
Well, I can't talk about the part that wasn't cultural, but let's talk about the cultural part, shall we? No, but yes, and I'll tell you something else. It's very easy, and I have fallen into this trap myself, right? But then you step away and you realize you've fallen into this trap, and it's only our own doing. We live in bubbles. So when I spend 2 weeks away, and I didn't go basically and cross off everything on my list, like, oh, I want to see every archaeological site on Turkey. I want to see it. It wasn't that kind of trip. In fact, anybody who likes to travel or is thinking of traveling, I suggest you pick up a Rick Steed book. Rick Steed is an amazing travel writer, and one of the things that he always emphasizes in his travels, regardless where you go, You should never deal with that trip as if it's a get everything on your list scene. Always go and travel like you're going to come back. That way you can actually give yourself some breathing room to enjoy the present experience that you're going through wherever you may be.
Well, you don't want structure. You want to discover.
Yeah, I think you want some structure,
But
but
you
I
want
think
to
you
know,
want to
like,
leave it open to her discovery and
little bit of
real experience.
adventure.
Yeah, I agree.
And going back to religion, not to
Yeah.
make a religion issue, but I always suggest people to, if they are Catholic or they are Christian, go to a mass, go to a temple, go to a mosque, sometime to see how things go, so you understand who the people from other religions are.
Absolutely. I mean, do you realize that the Quran, regardless of, or the Muslims, regardless what part of the world they come from, which the largest concentration is in Malaysia, that the Quran is only read in Arabic, even though the letters may be Western letters, the sounding of the words as you are sounding phonetically Arabic words. It's the only religion it's ever read in. Christianity. I mean, okay. There's a little joke here, right? I just said I was Greek Orthodox on my father's side, and my grandfather and his brother were actually very involved in the church in Haifa for generations, right? And we originally come from a town in Lebanon called Emyun, which if you go to Emyun, you trip over one Greek Orthodox church between every two other Greek Orthodox churches. It's been around since Byzantium times. So I'm Greek Orthodox on one side, and my mother is Catholic on her side, right? And her father was actually from Mosul, Iraq. So how many people understand that in Mosul, Iraq, there were Christians back in? My grandfather was born in 1899. Okay, my grandfather was gifted and I'll explain in a minute what I mean by that. He was gifted to the French Catholic Church to be taken to the Sorbonne to be educated, because he was one out of 13 people, 13 kids, and a family with 13 kids. Anybody who has 13 kids, you tell me if you can't use some assistance in their education, right? So he ended up basically at the Sorbonne for 4 years during World War I. He was considered from a country of axis of evil because it was the Ottoman Empire, and he wasn't able to leave the Sorbonne. Now, my grandfather, after he left the Sorbonne, spoke Aramaic, he spoke Arabic, he spoke so many languages, Italian, French, yeah, absolutely. And so I joke about the fact that I party with the Greek Orthodox at night, and I feel guilty about it with the Catholics in the morning.
You know, I
Okay.
have to say the Greek Orthodox celebrations have a lot of
But that
food.
man-
And you pray all night, but you eat all night
Well,
as well.
and the priests come to your house, and they're very much so. It's a very social thing. It's almost like the difference between Benedictines and like Maronites or Jesuits, right? To your point, and why I'm making fun of this thing between the Catholic and the Greek Orthodox, but what I mean by that is you miss out on experiencing the different nuances. The fact that you walk into a Greek Orthodox church and there's so many saints that we basically have to put them in easels and collages because there's no room on the altar anymore.
Yeah.
There's no room on, and when I say the altar, the whole friggin' wall, right? When you go to a Catholic church that is maybe in a small island, like I was in Mauritius for a project for a hotel project in '98, and that's an island that has Catholics, it has Baha'is, it has people, Buddhists, it has Muslims, and it's a small island. The island is so small that the half of the M in Mauritius is already in the ocean, and that's the first letter in the name. Okay, that's how small this island is. Okay, and on that island there are all those religions, and they all live peacefully together. And literally there's a Hindu shrine, and there's a Buddhist temple, and there's a mosque, and there's these little churches with red roofs on them. That's a Catholic church. That Catholic church on the island, Hawaii is the same way, is different than a Catholic church in the middle of Rome. Mm-hmm. So if you don't open yourself up to actually exploring the things that you don't know about, it's not a surprise that those things make you afraid. Mm-hmm. And then your fear basically ends up into a reactionary situation, and you either push back or you basically separate yourself. And if your neighbor happens to be a different religion, or they practice Christianity in a different way, now all of a sudden you're basically starting to have resentment because it's something you don't know.
Yeah.
It's very easy. If you really have strong faith in your religion or in your culture and whatever, then nobody else's culture or religion is going to undermine that.
You say something, a word, saint. Don't you miss, like in Europe or maybe in your culture, every day of the year there's a saint?
No, that's you guys. No, we have all the saints in the
really?
church, but we don't basically.
Really?
I mean, yes,
I
there
miss
are.
that.
No, but there are
Because
some.
here you say, oh, it's a French fries day,
Yeah.
and it's just a coffee day, But no, in France we have
It's actually
the
kind of.
saint.
It's actually kind of funny, Pascal, because what you're saying is the same way we celebrate, like, personal assistant day, and take your pet to work day, and all
Yeah,
of this
I
stuff.
know.
In Europe, it's actually there's Saint Jerome and Saint Cecilia and all of this stuff. Yes, and to what you're saying too is, where does that come from? So that comes from because I actually, when I was in Turkey, we happened to be moored. I was on a boat for about a week. Happened to be moored off this little island. And this little island, I looked at it because I'm looking across and there's ruins. And I can't really tell what the ruins are, but there's definitely ruins, right? So I look it up, and it's the island that is known as St. Nicholas's Island.
Oh wow!
St. Nicholas's Island, as in St. Nicholas, who is Santa Claus,
I
right?
know.
Okay.
That's a real Santa
Right.
Claus.
So
Not the made-up
there's
one.
4 churches on that island that are now in ruins. Fifth century church. You're minding your own business, floating in the Mediterranean, and there's a 5th century ruin in front of you. Above it is a 6th century one, 7th century, and 8th century. Okay, and there's one of them that actually still has mosaic. You could still see the mosaic that is like almost like you're in Pompeii or something, right? So that church was supposed to be the resting place of Saint Nicholas, and that church was on the path of pilgrimage to the Holy Land. And then at the time when Europe was like going from, this is the Eastern Church. This is the Byzantine Constantinople kind of based church, right? The Eastern Church. They basically moved the remains of Saint Nicholas to another place because there was an oncoming of like the Arab Moorish kind of.
I think they moved
potential
him to
vision.
Disneyland. I think that's
No, we didn't move him to Disneyland. But to your point, even when it comes to like Christmas and Saint Nicholas, like there are other elements to that story that are celebrated. Like in Switzerland, they celebrate different things, right? There's a prankster component that is sort of like almost like the arch enemy of Saint Nicholas that's in Switzerland. That I can't remember the name now.
I got a question for you. You ready?
Yeah.
This is a serious question. Maybe this is too serious, but I had to look this up. So
It's
I got
okay.
the
I can
detail.
ignore your serious questions. I've been doing it for 9 years.
I got the detail. I want to get the details right. And according to Wikipedia, in 1948, more than 700,000 Palestinian Arabs, about half of the Arabs in that area at the time, were either expelled or fled to get away from the violence that was the burgeoning state of Israel as the conflict developed and Jews returned to this area and turned it into a Jewish state. Your father was one of those, right?
Oh, my father and his brothers and sisters, as they're actually siblings. There's 6. 5 of them were alive and had been born at that point, and my grandmother ran across the border. I mean, they escaped for their lives. It wasn't like they were expelled or anything. But when you're in a situation like that, you don't just sit around and go, well, let me see what tomorrow brings.
Right.
Right? And you got 5 kids, and you literally, my grandfather and his brother stayed, I believe. And then my grandmother, who had family in Lebanon, they fled across the border to Lebanon. And the way that the story has been told is that while they were doing this, there was actually sniper fire from, I will use the word, Israeli freedom fighters, if you will. But there was no Israel at the time. It was being, it was in the midst of that whole, upheaval and the formation. And I don't want to get into the details of everything else, but the point is that this is, for me, it's not like a long distance story. This is my father and his brothers, twin brothers, and his two of his sisters, and my grandmother, that was literally running for their lives with the clothes on their backs, after basically living where my grandfather and his brother were accountants. They were involved with the Greek Orthodox Church in Haifa. You know, my brother.
This was about 100 years ago.
This was in 1948.
Yeah.
Or 1940.
And in 1950, my grandfather, because now they've been displaced, they're refugees, and we were fortunate enough, if you will, or they were fortunate enough, that they were in the first wave of people that left, so the countries were still assimilating them and giving them nationalities.
Right.
The people
Which
that left
didn't
later,
happen to later groups, right? Yeah.
that didn't happen to later groups. They became basically refugees with travel documents. They didn't really belong anywhere because they wouldn't assimilate more of them. And my grandfather ended up going to look for opportunities to support his family of, you know, his wife and probably his brothers too, and, you know, his children. And he had an opportunity in Kuwait in 1950. You can think of Kuwait in 1950, there was absolutely nothing. It was a great opportunity, but he could not take it because Kuwait did not have an education, an academic system, like schools, that he could put the kids in. So they ended up in Iraq because there was schools there, because Iraq, as old as Iraq is, and that's how they ended up in Iraq.
So you told me, and the only reason I know this, you told me once, you actually had a guest years ago who was a friend of yours from high school, and his family had the same exodus.
Yeah.
And
He was actually, in his case, he was born in Jerusalem
and then the family
because his
fled.
because his family had continued to maintain, you know, like an ability to, like, some people just refused to basically be displaced. Like, they tried really hard to hold on to what was rightfully theirs, what their families had built.
Sure.
And so in his case, I think they had still family. Like, I don't think we have any more Ghantouses in. There may be some in Jaffa, maybe in Jaffa, but most of them left. In some cases, some of these families, they actually have members of the family that are still there. And so they go over to visit. They send financial assistance. You know, they do stuff like that. In the case of the gentleman you were talking about, Tarek, he was born in Jerusalem on a visit when his mother was there.
So here's my other follow-up to that. You, the two of you, offline said how different it was than my experience, than Chef Pascal's experience in life, than most people's experience in life, because you felt like you were stateless. These people, when they left, still thought of themselves as residents of that area, as Palestinians, and
I don't
they
think
can't go home.
we ever, anybody who is Palestinian by, let's just use the kind of the proper non-controversial terminology here, Palestinian by ethnic background,
Right.
by cultural
Arabs
heritage,
born in that area.
no, not Arabs born in that area. People that were of Palestinian heritage. We had costumes, we had traditional wear, we had families that were in multiple generations of businesses, landowners. This is not just an in-passing kind of horde of people.
Right.
Okay? So anybody that actually derives from that, it's like you. Were you born in Ireland?
No.
Were your parents born in Ireland?
No.
No. Do you still have a strong connection with your Irish heritage?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. It's no different. It's the same.
But
Okay.
but what struck me is that you guys said to grow up that way because the assumption was you were going to get absorbed into Lebanon, into Iraq, into the
Well, no.
Syria and other
I
places.
think even though we were holders of passports, because there's a practicality thing here, right? Like people that were American citizens that went and still got their Irish passports as well.
Right.
Okay. I mean, why get an Irish passport? Well, because there's a convenience factor. There's a practicality. If they needed to use it, if something happened, whatever. For us, the identity that you hold and the gratitude that you have for the country that basically assimilated you or absorbed you. Like, I have an American citizenship. Okay, I have gratitude for that, but it doesn't take away from the fact that I have a very strong connection with my Palestinian heritage.
I guess the point I was making
And
is
so
that
I still
you
feel
always
I-
felt on the move, that you're always moving
Well,
from
yes,
one place
I mean,
to
the practicality is yes, you are always on the move. And
Right.
in my case, I was born in one country, raised in 2 countries, or 3 countries actually, went to summers in another country. My family was kind of spread around out of economic opportunity, or you know, geographical necessity, and a combination of everything that's above. And I ended up basically in a situation where I then went to school in another country, right? And so when I came to the United States, and at this point, I came in 1985. At this point, I've lived here longer than I've ever lived anywhere else.
Yeah. So talking about that.
But you don't feel necessarily anchored
That's what I was
in
getting
the
at. Right.
geography of where you are. You feel anchored in your heritage, and you take that with you. But when you get to the point where you're older and you're looking back and reflecting on that, and I've shared this with you, it felt at some point that I didn't belong anywhere.
That's what I was getting
And
at.
then, like a switch turned on, and I couldn't tell you why. So I don't think there was a moment other than maybe a moment of internal clarity. And I realized it's not that I don't belong anywhere. It's as a result of that background, I belong everywhere.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, but you're
Right.
a person of the world, like you.
And I
should
think
say.
you feel the same way a little bit.
And I think that goes to
And-
Chef Pascal's question about culture and feeling an affinity to other groups and an interest to go to other places and a
Well,
connection.
also they demonstrate why Raad have so much envy to know other people's culture, because you like
Because he belongs everywhere.
It's your adventurous life, your life is to know who is my neighbor.
Look, there's nothing worse, I think, in the world than to lose curiosity, especially as you get older. Okay, I think that's or lose the desire to want to learn.
You want to share your life too.
Well, of course, because I feel that, and like I said, it not necessarily that there was a master plan, right? But if I look back and I look at my experiences, it was a lot of happy accidents in that things happened I didn't expect, and then I look back, and not only did it serve they served me well, but they also helped in forming the person I am, in sort of self, personal growth, the ability to basically see things from different people's perspective. How the heck do you see things from different people's perspective when all you do is basically sit in your own silo?
So now that we
Let alone, how do you empathize with other people's perspectives?
So now we almost know where you come from, but it's a lot.
From
It's a moving target.
from
I'm
everywhere.
pretty much from everywhere. Yeah.
What brought you to California?
School. So after I got done with my undergraduate, I didn't really have a plan. And actually, let me step back for 1 minute. So
Was it not a culture shock when you came here?
no, because I had an uncle in Chicago, and I had been to Chicago maybe once or twice before. But I'll tell you why it wasn't a culture shock. It wasn't a culture shock because we used to get stuff in Kuwait or overseas. I don't know if people know this. TV shows and things like that are a little bit delayed,
Yeah, right.
right?
Sure.
So I mean, I was fully.
I mean, you were watching.
I was
you
fully
watched
literal. I was fully.
Miami Vice.
No. Well, I think that may have been something I watched here, but no. It goes back further than that.
The Wild Wild West or something.
Wild Wild West
Oh yeah.
with Robert Conrad.
Yeah. Can I tell you something funny real quickly? I had a Vietnamese friend here that the guy did some work with. And I said, what did you learn before you came from Vietnam? He said, oh, Wild Wild West.
Wild Wild West.
Watched that all the time in Vietnam. 10 years after we did.
Happy Days.
Yeah.
Shout
Happy
out
Days.
to the Fonz, to Henry Winkler. I mean, rocking, education there for anybody coming to the United States.
Right.
$6 Million Man, the Rockford Files. I knew about those beaches in California where the trailers could be parked and the Camaros all day long. Right. I think people. That exported nature of the cultural exchange that happens through movies and stuff like that. I actually this week I sent a message on social to Sylvester Stallone because Sylvester Stallone basically was talking talking about how his show Tulsa King's is going to be now on ABC or something versus just
I love that show.
streaming set, right? And I said, it's an awesome show. I can't wait for season 2. Congratulations. I've been a big fan for a long time, from the days of not even Rocky. Rocky, yes, for sure. But Fist, do you remember Fist?
Yeah.
Yeah,
right.
Fist, which if people don't know, that Switzerland made a movie called Fist. You should see it. It's about
Union organizing.
union organizing. It's
Yeah.
an awesome movie. I'm going to out a bunch of my friends from high school. I'm not going to say who they are, but after we saw that movie in the big movie theater in,
But
in
the
Kuwait.
show is not that amazing, but the character.
Well,
are unbelievable.
he's great. I've always liked him, right? But here's the thing that most people don't know. By accident, when I went to school in Switzerland, because I was going to go to my dad's alma mater in Lebanon, and that was my plan. And nobody bothered to tell me that, well, maybe you should change your plan because there's a war going on. And maybe you can't go there because there's a war going on.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh, okay. So what am I going to do now? It's
It's
like
the
I'm
long-standing-
graduating. It's summer. I'm done with high school. So I literally go into the administrative building of the school, and I see on the board, pinned to the board, is a little booklet that says American College of Switzerland. And my mother doesn't want me to go to the United States because I'm 16 and I'm going to get lost in everything that the United States is, this big country, Africa being in a small country. So I'm like, okay, I don't want to go to an English system college because I'm going to spend more time basically getting ready in high school. So it's got to be an American system. Okay, great. American College of Switzerland. American, check. In Switzerland, check. It's Europe. It's not the United States. So I applied. And I ended up on the side of the mountain in Switzerland with 300 people as a maximum cohort of any year, with every personality I was going to ever meet in my life under one roof. Okay?
Not a bad place to be.
Unbelievable. I mean, every personality, every idiosyncrasy. Over the 4 years I was there. So I graduate, and I come out of there.
What did you graduate with?
With undergraduate in a Bachelor's of Science in Economics is what I graduated with. And which was interesting because I was supposed to go do a civil engineering degree
Well, because of your dad.
because of my dad, and I would have probably shifted to architecture because I would have probably found engineering a little bit dry.
Later on, you switch back.
It's full circle. That's what I'm talking about, how life basically does what it does. So I come back, and I'm in summer in Kuwait. I haven't applied for graduate school. This is like 1985. Everybody friggin' applied for graduate school to do an MBA. Man, I didn't apply for a graduate school. I'm going back. I'm going to hang out with my friends, spend summer on the beach.
You're living the rad life.
Before I even knew before I even knew I was living the rad life. So I end up going back, and I realize I can't stay in Kuwait because if you're over 18, you have to have your own permit as a male. You can't be attached to a family as far as your visa. So I'm over 18. I'm in Kuwait. I cannot stay in Kuwait. I have to now apply for graduate school somewhere else. So we reach out to the head of student affairs at my college, my undergraduate, God rest his soul, Victor Saint Marie, who had graduated from Bakersfield. Bakersfield
from Kuwait.
Bakersfield. No, Kuwait, to a small village in the side of the mountains called Leysin, with 300 students. And now you graduate after 4 years of that, and now you're going to go end up in Bakersfield. Basically,
really at the end of the world.
a number on your shirt.
Now you have a culture shock.
And that's that. So I ended up literally going to Bakersfield for my first semester, because what I also had done, my sister was coming to California, and the reason I came to California is because my sister was coming to California, 3 years younger. She got admitted into a great school, Claremont McKenna College, which at one point used to be Claremont Men's College, and women were not allowed. And it happened to be that there was a graduate school in Claremont. So I'm like, well, graduate school, Claremont, okay, cool, I applied. I had no clue when I applied to the graduate school in Claremont that this was the Peter Drucker School of Management.
And he's there.
And he's there teaching. I had no clue who Peter Drucker was. I mean, remember, I was going to go hang out on the beach and, pick up a job or something in Kuwait, right?
Pick up a girl.
Right. But no, not in Kuwait.
Okay.
That may be in Michigan. But not in Kuwait. But so I ended up basically, again, accidentally ended up at this situation. And after one semester in Bakersfield, which let me tell you, I mean, I was at the end of the school at the time was at the end of town. The dorm was at the end of the school. My room was at the end of the dorm. And nothing between me and the desert was nothing other than the head of the Chicano Student Union, who basically had a cannabis plant growing in his closet, wore camos all the time and Ray-Bans. And nice guy, but we literally would sit on the fire escapes and listen to the coyotes. Okay, So what I was going to say about Switzerland is, later I find out that Mr. Sylvester Stallone actually spent a stint in Switzerland at the same school I was in.
I didn't know that.
So I actually put that in my message to him. Obviously, I have not heard back from
Actually,
Sly, but
the Swiss life is a bit laid back as well.
well, that's the nicest thing I've heard a Frenchman say about the Swiss
No.
ever, because usually the Swiss
No.
are really nasty to the French.
They have a healthier life than we have in France for sure.
Well, I think it's easy to do that, Pascal, when the whole world comes over and puts their money in your banks. Okay,
Sure.
you don't really have a lot to worry about.
You don't worry about
Right.
tomorrow.
By the way, good chocolate.
Oh,
Good job.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So yeah, it was happy accidents.
and all right.
So what visa did you carry all that time as your parents carried?
I had a Jordanian passport, and
Jordanian.
but I think it was just about when I went to college, or maybe while I was in college, for my undergrad, that we had applied for a green card through the American Embassy in Kuwait, and we had gotten approval. My uncle had been in Chicago since 1965. He came for medical school, went to Newport.
Did he work for Al Capone or no?
No. Although my uncle Waldo does think he's a black man trapped in a white man's body, because he's really embraced the jazz culture and everything in
Yeah.
Chicago. Chicago is an amazing town. Great friends. He was there right in the middle of 1965. Can you imagine being in Chicago
wow.
in 1965? Right, the Playboy.
Yeah.
It's like being in West LA in 1970. Right, in Marina Del Rey.
Right.
So
Down on State Street.
down on
Miracle-
State Street,
Miracle
yeah,
Mile.
yeah, Miracle Mile.
Been there many
It's
times.
really great. So he had been there. He became a kidney specialist. Actually, taught at Northwestern, and he's still there. I have a lot of family in Chicago. So we got our citizenship, or our green cards, while I was in college in Switzerland, and so had dual nationality. And then I actually remember very clearly when we went to get the green cards at the American Embassy, I had to file for selective service.
Maybe you got to.
It was Reagan, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Don Reagan. I remember I had to register for the vote. I registered Republican at the time, and then I had to register for selective service. And I had that. I still have it. That selective service card that was laminated.
Nice.
And it's like folded. It's like
Yeah.
it's like this
I-
folded thing.
I had one.
You
Yeah.
had, right? Yeah. So I had that from I must have been when I turned 18.
So
What's the one thing about Raad Ghantous, as we come down the last 10 minutes, that nobody knows?
Oh, you're going to give us more than 10 minutes.
Hold on.
You've got more questions.
Yeah.
Hey, after 9 years, almost 10 years,
we
I
good.
get more than 10
I
minutes.
have a few.
But what?
What's the-
question?
Go ahead, Pascal. Yeah. This is fun, by the way, guys. Thanks.
We're going to talk about what's a Raad life later, but in the meantime, you also have a business life, and that's the engineering side of it, I guess.
Well, again, how did I fall into interior design? Interior design is what you're talking about. How did I fall into interior design? Again, I went to do an undergraduate in economics. Why? Because I didn't get to do my degree in engineering. Which, again, in hindsight, now I would say I probably would have changed to architecture, right? So that got kind of derailed. So we did undergraduate in economics. Okay, what do you do after an undergraduate in economics? Usually you either get a law degree and go work in the government,
Right.
or you basically go teach, or you, at the time, 1985, you got an MBA because $50,000 a year buy you a lot of beer, right? Remember that song? Future's so bright, I gotta wear shades.
Yeah.
Was it Georgia Satellite?
I'd have to think. I don't know.
Might be Georgia Satellites. Anyway, so I ended up getting that, and then following over the MBA. Now, usually when you go do an MBA, you should have some years of experience working, so you know why the hell you're learning the MBA. I had no clue. So I ended up where I was now trying to find work and I wanted to kind of do sales. Like my kind of dream job in my mind at the time was go be a buyer for like, let's see, let me date myself here. Bullocks, I Magnum, okay.
Buyer for clothing.
I'm going to travel around and buy, clothes. I think maybe I was too influenced by that movie Mannequin or something. I don't know, right? so I ended up basically not getting a job because I didn't have any sales experience, and anybody I was basically going up against
You
was
just wanted
somebody
to
who
have-
had sales from the time they had a bicycle route.
But you wanted to have free clothes.
Well, yeah, I guess maybe I was a crow's horse from back then too. So I ended up wanted to do something, obviously, and a friend of my dad's who wasn't married at the time we were in Kuwait, didn't have any kids. Now he has 3 kids. Was married, Syrian originally. This is the guy who used to take me to school when my dad couldn't take me to school. And I spent a whole bunch of time with my dad on job sites when I was a kid. So I felt really comfortable on job sites. So this guy comes over. He brings over money from an inheritance in Syria. Shout out to the Bustami family here. And he started doing development with his brother, who was a general contractor. So I went and basically went back and played in the sandbox that I grew up in with him for a couple of years. This was around, I think, 87 to maybe 91. One of the things that we were doing is building a duplex in San Clemente. Can you imagine San Clemente back in 1987, 90? There was like, people would go, where? Where's that? Isn't that Pendleton? That's Pendleton, isn't it?
A beach city.
But nobody knew.
Yeah.
I mean, how great a city it was. And the people in San Clemente weren't about to tell anybody in Orange County,
Well, the
by the way.
city
They were
on-
like,
Yeah.
no, you stay away. That's
It was
fine.
a city on weekend, but during the week there was nobody.
No, but I mean, I remember when we moved, there was like maybe 40,000 people, right? There was no Talega. There was no 73 freeway. People literally, when I was in design school, which I'm going to get to here, would ask me, where's that? And I'd say, San Juan Capistrano. Oh, yeah, the Mission. I'd say 15 minutes down, and they look at me like, you poor child. Why are you living in the back 40, right? So I ended up basically working on that duplex that we were building in 87, 88. And about 90, we're like finished. My sister was going to now graduated undergraduate. She had done a year of just working around, and she was going to do a master's degree in an MBA at UCI. Shout out for UCI. And so we were like, well, we rented all the time in like Claremont Upland area when she was doing her school and I was doing mine. And it was ridiculous to just rent. So we bought one half of that duplex with the idea that we would just stay there while she was doing her graduate degree, and then who knows where we would be, but that way we're not throwing money down the drain. And my mom comes over. The house is done. My mom comes over. They were living in Kuwait at the time, and she's trying to put furniture. She's here to furnish the house.
They came to be with her kids.
Well, she came. I think my dad was still there, and the first Gulf War started in Kuwait, and my mother was basically here stuck with my dad in Kuwait for 10 days, and we were afraid for his life because it was lawless in Kuwait during that time. She was stuck here with 2 bags of clothes, and so. Long story short, she ended up staying. We ended up staying, whatever. But there was no plan to stay in San Clemente. So again, at that moment in time, also something else happened. The real estate market crashed in '91. Yeah. There was no development. So all of a sudden,
when they used to say, "Stay alive till '95."
Yeah, stay alive till '95. Exactly. Boy, I haven't heard that in forever.
Yeah.
So here I am stuck at home with mom that I love, but. Man, I haven't shared space with my mother for over 10 years. This is like a really different social impact here, right?
No Raad life there.
No, Raad life was on hold, right?
No Raad life there.
So I'm like, just what am I going to do? And, and here comes this thing in the mail, and I am not kidding you. This was a card about this big, 2-sided. And it said, Interior Designers Institute, down the street here on Camelback and Bison. IDI, Interior Designers Institute, Summer Certificate Program. 12 weeks of arts and crafts. Cool. Where's my scissors? Let's go do arts and crafts for 12 weeks. No plan whatsoever other than that, right? That summer certificate program at IDI led to 3 more years of undergraduate work, additional work, another degree in interior design, and it led to gosh, at this point, you're talking about I graduated in 94. So from 94 to 2004, what's that, 12, 40 years?
Long time.
94, so from 94 till today, that
30
led,
years, yeah.
30 years, that led to an interior design career that basically has had me on five-star hotel projects in Dubai, working for a firm out of Atlanta. It had me on
Mauritius.
an island of Mauritius for 3 months on a lagoon for a resort. I've worked on a bunch of projects here. The last since 2000, I've been under my own flag and literally bringing that kind of level of sophisticated business consultancy for the hospitality business, whether it's a restaurant or spa or whatever, and you can relate to this, bringing that level of sophisticated consultancy that then manifests itself in a physical environment to the mom and pops, not necessarily only the five stars, because I recognized, and maybe this is again kind of partly upbringing, partly being of service, partly wanting to make a difference kind of thing, right? Or helping others, is that a lot of people that were mom and pop or smaller operators needed the same level of sophisticated consultancy and needed a really dialed in physical environment that really lined up with their brand and their vision for their business. And then that basically became sort of a passion pursuit for me, is to be of that help. It's obviously waned a little bit now at this point. Like I've been doing it for so long. So now I'm looking for different challenges, but still, I think the motivation is the same.
And that's coming back, because even mom and pop businesses now want to reach out with their own image into the business.
Yes and no. Sadly, most of those businesses don't realize or understand that they deserve that custom tailored product.
Yeah.
They deserve to have that. Not only do they deserve it because it's a nice thing to do, they deserve it because their success really is based on how well their business is designed to succeed.
Yeah, are you not tired of all the design cookie cutters?
Look, I used to say this. I used to say this all the time. I said, if you walk into a place and it just failed, and you take the logo off the wall and you put your logo on there, and that's all that's happening here, good luck, because you're probably going to fail as well. If you're thinking this just because you have good food and good service, that's going to be successful. Good luck, because you'll be the first one to probably tell people that is a very competitive space, and you have to have a unique offering, and you have to have a unique dialed in every touch point, like all of the sophisticated level of business consultancy that if you're a mom and pop, money's coming out of your pocket or savings or something to maintain this business. If you are a large corporation, you could take a hit. If you're a mom and pop and you don't have the benefit of that, and I will say this again, you deserve to have that kind of customization, because if you don't, you are risking failure. And if you think that you can't afford that, can you really afford not having it? It's not as expensive as you think if you're dealing with the right kind of people. Particularly what? Particularly you lost your connection?
I lost my connection because you're dealing in experiential worlds. I've got to have an experience, not just good food. When I go to a spa, I got to have an experience when I go to a restaurant. If it's an individual restaurant, something's got to stand out about that brings you back more than just good food.
You have to go to places that you feel good.
Yeah.
And if not,
it's got to be a feeling.
Actually, I'll tell you something. Pascal is very correct on this, and it may sound very trite, or it may sound very little and meaningless, but yes, because you can spend millions of dollars on a space. You can spend millions of dollars on your staff and on your chef de cuisine and all that stuff, right? And your nice menu and all of this stuff. But if the feeling isn't what you just said, and feel good is not easy to achieve.
No.
Because it could be something that's a small little cafe that barely has any furniture. But it's something about the ambiance, something about the way that you are treated, the way that you're interacted with, the way that you are talked to, that makes you come back.
In French, they say "je ne sais quoi."
Yeah,
There's a reason why they say je ne sais quoi, because they don't know.
That's certain something. I
It's
can't
like
put.
it's like your home away, and
Yeah.
so talking about hospitality and mixing this everything you just said.
But I think why I really like it, Pascal, honestly, is in part is because it's people.
Yeah.
Hospitality is people in most cases,
Well, this
unless
is-
it becomes
this is-
run by an
this is-
accountant, and then it
this
stops
is-
being people.
This is where I'm getting.
Yeah.
And you and I got friends very quickly. I don't know why, but
I don't know why.
and
Well, we've known each other for a long time, known of each other for a long
Yeah.
time, and then honestly, I reached out to you, not that I didn't know you, because I actually had been a frequent visitor to your restaurant when it was on
Bristol.
Bristol, when I was at IDI. You were just down the street, and that was my little escape for a little culture, to be honest with you.
There you
Like,
go.
okay, I'd sit out there with a little fountain
There
and
you
have some jambon and
so
fromage.
you felt good there.
Yeah, because it was, for me, it was like a little comfortable.
Comfort.
Right. It reminded me of a comfortable thing. But I reached out to you when I originally reached out to you and had you and interviewed you, is because here is a guy that went through a heck of a lot and was still positive. And I'm talking about a heck of a lot medically. You've had health issues. You've had some, professional challenges, and you're still positive. You're still out there. You're still finding reason to.
Well, you're alive, so you have no choice.
Well, yes, you do have a choice. You just choose what you choose.
What, I
Yeah,
think that's the
exactly.
right
Sure,
choice.
the world's full of people out there that choose the other.
Yeah.
Choose to be morbid. Choose to look at the dark side. Choose to be afraid of the unknown. Choose.
I think one of us is running for president right now.
Okay, no, let's not go there. So,
Ignore Paul. I've been doing it for 9 years. It's not as hard as it sounds.
my question was about your own hospitality.
Yeah.
If ever you become friend of Raad, and this is a little bit the Raad life that I learned what it is actually.
Oh, you're going
Uh,
to take people behind the scenes now?
Yes,
Uh-oh.
you invite me for coffee.
Yeah.
And if you invite me for coffee, we're not going to say, oh, let's go to which Starbucks do you go? Which coffee house do you go? No, it's like, come home, I'm going to make you a coffee. You have to cross your calendar because that coffee is going to be taking half of your day.
It's
No.
not a half an hour.
No, even if it's a little Turkish coffee that's that big, and that's the right life. We have a coffee and we talk for a couple of hours, and I really like that. That's it's cultural for me. And it's like a spa, a massage of your brain. It's just we have a good
Ooh, I like that.
a good time together, and we talk and we change.
Chef Pascal, let me tell you that when after a couple of years of doing this show here, he said, "You know the thing I like about this? One of the few times I don't have an agenda. I'm not here for a meeting. I'm not here for a purpose, a plan, an immediate. I'm just talking. I'm just getting to know people
Yeah.
and sharing."
Well, here's the thing, and you and I have talked about this.
yeah, we
okay?
don't do that much. In the
We're
world.
doing this show has been. I mean, I took a hiatus because of some issues with my parents' health as they were deteriorating, and still came back. I don't know why. I spent time with this guy, right?
Beginning to wonder.
But 9 years we've been doing this. Paul gave me the opportunity to do this, or I don't know, he talked me into somehow doing this when I had just turned 50. And it, again, one of those happy accidents in life. I told him, do you remember what I told you? I said, we're going to do this 1 month at a time. And we're,
Well, because there was-
and we're now, and then I'm like, well, what do you do this? Well, you go over here, you do this, you get that. I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, fine, sure, why not? Let me do it. The closest I had ever even gotten to putting myself in front of a microphone was I happen to like cartoons and Looney Tunes, and Mel Blanc is a favorite of mine because of the voiceovers that he did. And I used to say, maybe I'll do voiceovers, or something like that. Like, that's
You could,
great, or,
You have a good
Tony
voice.
the Tiger.
well, nobody ever told me that, Pascal. Nobody ever told me
Really?
until we started doing the show, oh, you have a voice for radio.
Brought
I'm
out a
like,
talent.
I had no idea. Nobody ever told me that, ever, right? So we started doing the show, and it was in the middle of the week, exactly noon on Wednesday,
right.
and it became a little vacation, a little step away from everything else going on. You can't be on your phone, not really. You can't be engaged with anything else. I think we have done maybe less than a handful of shows that were pre-recorded. Every single one of these shows has been live.
Yeah.
Right? Talk about that being a crazy way of doing things, right? But every show has been live. Not one of those shows probably has been overly curated at all. In fact, I did not want to rob myself of experiencing you as a guest in real time. Because we live lives that are so friggin' curated. Okay? One of the things I heard recently, and it's so sad reflection on things, is that people say, well, the last 4 years don't feel real. The last 4 years since COVID, they just don't feel real. They don't feel normal. They don't feel real. Yeah, because 4 years ago, everybody went nose dived into the friggin' virtual world to where now their perceived problems, their perceived issues, the things that they basically get polarized about, all this stuff is not what's happening in their real life.
Their immediate day-to-day existence.
It's happening in their virtual life.
Yeah, that's why it's put in front of you.
Every friggin' person who's showing you their 8x10 highlight reel as being the reflection of what their real life is. Look behind those influencers and take a look at when they're basically showing all this stuff and realize, is that a rented place that they're in? Do they own that property? Is that clothes that they have theirs? Do they have to return it after this video shoot? My point I'm trying to make is, it's sad. We have walked away from real and allowing ourselves to experience things that are the real treasures in life. So being on this show and being able to do that as a gift for myself and for others, call it selfish. It was an unbelievable thing that accidentally happened.
I think I was thinking that you're the best influencer for people to go into be a philosopher. You're a philosopher on your own. You think and you take everything very inside.
Sometimes it's
inside
hard.
you.
I remember people used to say that my sensors are almost like my sensory ends are on at all times. Mm-hmm. It's a difficult way to sometimes. Some days that's really tough to be that way, right? Like you but I would rather have that than the numbness. And I have to say that I would never do this show where it was basically curated, because that would be a mistake. And I think anybody that has
scripted, you mean, where it's all written
scripted.
out.
I think, and I think when we did a wrap up, remember that wrap up party we did about 2-3 years ago? We thought, okay, we're done with the Raad Life, and then here we come again. We had people come on that were like guests, people that came on to the party, right? Yeah. I really like the fact, and I'm very proud of the fact that most people, 99.9% of the people in the show, I don't want to say 100% because I haven't asked 100% of them, actually walked away from this experience of an hour sitting down and just having a conversation, having a good time. They felt good. They felt like there was an enrichment because we had a conversation.
And they all felt it was out of their normal existence. Gee, that's weird. I never just sat down and just talked.
Yeah, and that's why I actually go to my point I was going to say. With all your cultural experience on your traveling, because you're a world traveler, and I think when we come to your show, you will feel that we visit almost a cultural guru or a sage. You're a sage, You just present things in a very philosophical way.
Sometimes I get long-winded, and I'll be the first to admit it.
Okay.
No
Paul
comment.
didn't comment. That was such a low lob for you, Paul. Okay, but not.
No comment.
And people listening are laughing. You're like, yeah, you're long-winded. You take the long road. But I will tell you, I'm very touched that you would say that. I'm fine with just saying that somebody basically that comes and talks and that we are at least, we find common grounds and we're friends. Mm-hmm. That if somebody feels comfortable, like you were saying, you come for coffee, like I don't have a plan to keep you for half an hour or 45 minutes. Sure. No, I mean, I didn't lock the door and take the air out of your tires so that you'd have to stay. It just, I think we rob ourselves these days from not allowing ourselves some room. Everything is so scripted, starting with our calendar. And society tells us that if you're not 10xing everything, if you're not basically filling every calendar hole that you have with something, then you are not a representation of somebody who's productive. Okay? How do you actually have time to think? How do you have time to actually process? Okay? Find validity in your position, or maybe learn from what you've done and maybe do it better. If you don't have room, it's still 24 hours a day. I don't know anybody who's made it 25. Do you?
You've tried a couple times.
I've tried, and it doesn't work. It's still 24 hours. That's sort of the irony of life. So I think we do ourselves a disservice. We do our families a disservice, people around us a disservice, our relationships a disservice, when we don't understand that the space between things is as important as the things that we are doing. How do you connect with people that work for you if you don't have the time to get to know them? You don't. You try to make them fit a mold that you're familiar with. Well, good luck with that today after COVID, because that's not going to happen. Good luck today with doing that with millennials, because that's not going to happen either. So, but even if it wasn't millennials and COVID, as a human being, where did you stop being connected to other human beings? Connected, really connected, not seeing their highlight reels on their stories on social. Actually connected, reaching out, picking up the phone, calling them. Because here's the thing, and I'm going to credit this to a friend of mine who basically told me this a couple of years ago.
You're welcome.
No, it wasn't you. You've said other things to me that I cannot share on the air, but
You're welcome.
You're welcome for that too. Yeah, but no, make time for your friends before time takes your friends.
Yeah, I said that today on social media.
Every day.
Right? But we know that in the back of our head. But are you actually consciously living that?
And why do we think that,
As a starting point, just one of the things that you do.
why do we think that taking time just to talk, to share, to visit is a waste
No. It's
or
not.
unproductive?
It's not a waste.
But
Why
many
do
of
we
us,
think that that's the case?
Yeah. We've been taught to believe that's a waste.
I don't know. People don't want to allow for that flexibility. Some people may not feel that they're good at it. But here's the thing.
But you have to take the time.
No, but here's the thing.
It's your own time.
Here's the thing, right? At the same time that we don't do that, here's the irony. We hire people whose title are storytellers to craft our messaging.
Our story. Yeah.
You mean raconteur?
No, but I mean, yeah, rock and tour, exactly. but you're hiring somebody to craft your story.
Yeah.
You remember that
Because
episode?
you don't have time to sit there and figure out what your story is.
You remember the episode of Seinfeld where the guy who ran the catalog bought Kramer's stories?
Yes.
He needed more interesting stories,
Right.
and Kramer would tell these stories. He said, I'm buying those. But you can't use them anymore. They're my stories now.
Nice.
Right. He bought the stories. So why don't we do that? I don't know, Paul. I think we are told that we need to be busy. I mean, I'm not saying that people are not really busy. The reality of life is they are. I mean, we live in a world where financially people probably need two jobs, two people having a job. People are not getting married as early. They're not having kids because it's expensive.
Social media is coming at us all the time.
But the social media component, the bombardment with noise. I spent a week in Turkey where I consciously disconnected. And every time I felt, like this is a nice 5th century Byzantine church, I should probably share that, I said no. Okay? And that no wasn't, by the way, for other people. It's like, this is one thing I learned, like from a book I've been reading recently called Protect Your Peace. I mean, in fact, I'm going to try to get the gentleman on the show. When you say no, you're not saying no for the other person.
For yourself.
You're saying no for yourself.
Right.
And you don't have to explain why it feels like a no.
Yeah.
Okay? Now listen to what I just said and tell me if half the people you know won't have basically cold sweats thinking about that.
No. Absolutely.
right? So
I used to call it the illusion of activity. The more activity you have, somehow you have more of a life, you have more success, you have more.
there was an article in Harvard Business Review about 2 years ago or a year and a half ago called "The Myth of Busyness,"
Yeah, same thing.
and the cover was a friggin' beehive with a whole bunch of bees buzzing around. We have to stop and be able to appreciate those things that are between the gaps. And I'll tell you how clear it is. If you have a room, a wall, and you have, this is a little interior design, right? If you have a wall and every inch of that wall is covered with art, pieces that you love, pieces that you've collected, but the whole wall is covered with art. Okay? Can you see those pieces anymore? Individually? Or is it just a chaos now?
Right.
Visual stimulation. Every inch is covered with art, right? Now, there's a way to do that as a style, right? But if you go to a gallery, you go to a car showroom, you go to, I don't know, a Louis Vuitton store, do you see corner to corner purses? Do you see corner to corner Mercedes at Fletcher Jones? Do you see?
Oh, yes.
Do you see? No, you don't.
Oh, yeah.
No, you see space between the
I'm
pieces.
not sure about that.
Well, but like, okay, you go to the Louvre. The Mona Lisa has artwork all around it? No. The Louis Vuitton shop? No. The Louis Vuitton shop has 2 or 3 pieces in the window in a big, huge wall of Louis Vuitton logos. Why? Because that's how that piece is basically perceived to have the value of the price tag that's on it, which is very high. So we know instinctively that when we see a unique piece with nothing around it, that has more value than if every inch of the shelf is filled, right?
Absolutely. Same trick in advertising. People want to put everything into an ad, and eventually you see
But
nothing in the
this
ad.
is marketing, you know.
Right, so
Even
if
when
we-
you're a
if we-
kid, you
so-
see the biggest bear in the window of a toy store.
Yeah.
And you want to go in for that big bear.
Right, but you don't. But if that big bear had all kinds of bears around it, you think that's a thrift shop, and you don't see the value.
Yeah. Exactly.
So if we already instinctively know that when this item has space around it, it has value, it has worth, it has luxury. Why is it that we don't deal with our time the same way?
Yeah. Well,
You tell me. The great
so
Duke Ellington
so
used
I
to
probably won't invite you in my home because I have a lot of things on my walls.
a little chaos.
No, but you just said Duke Ellington, right?
Yeah, Duke Ellington used to say that the important thing was not the notes you play, but the notes you choose
Not to play, and the space between the notes.
Right.
Right, because that's what makes the piece.
Right.
Now, unless you're Miles Davis and you're basically riffing,
Right.
or somebody that's got like an amazing guitar skills, but even then, there's space,
Yes, have to be.
and yet we don't deal with our time and
Placement.
our lives with space. All we are doing is buying into the fact that people want us to fill it with more and more and more. And if you stop and question, the people that are asking me and pushing me to fill it with more and more and more, is it that because they're selling me a book that says that?
Oh,
Is it
talking
because
about
they're
books.
selling me something that needs to be put in there because they're benefiting from it, and I'm basically just becoming a depository of more and more and more and more? Do you know that, I'll just end with this. Do you know that before World War II, there was no industry called public storage?
Mm.
There was no public storage units.
Hmm.
People lived with small closets, with 1 suit and 3 shirts.
Right.
Right? That was it. Then we started getting into manufacturing, and people needing to buy stuff. Baby boomers, starting with baby boomers, more formula, more this, everything being produced in mass. And then you had to basically buy the stuff, because if you didn't buy the stuff, the economy crashed. And so you ended up buying so much stuff that you couldn't even fit it into your house anymore. So here comes this new industry called public storage, where you basically now pay to have an external storage area to put the stuff that you don't
Right.
use.
Right.
And after 3 months, you don't go and get it anymore, but you're still paying for the storage.
Can't let go of it.
Right? So we collect quantity, but for value and quality, you need the space.
Well, we need some space here. We got to digest all this stuff here.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions still to make quick.
Okay,
quick.
okay. I'll just answer the questions. I'll stay on point.
All right.
I'll
Yes.
try.
What about You
Paul's rolling his eyes.
Oh, my
You
God.
guys can't see him. He's rolling. He's been rolling his eyes for 9 years,
Oh,
man.
my
I
God.
feel like I need to pay for his medical bills.
I have some chocolate.
Here, have some chocolate.
We're coming
Paul.
to the end here.
Have some
Have some
chocolate.
chocolate.
Have some
Okay.
chocolate.
All right.
And what?
Don't eat it all at the same time, though. Leave some space.
I'm gonna get all.
How is the wildlife book coming?
Is there a Rad Life book coming?
So people have told me for years, oh, you should write a book. You should write a book. And I don't know if it's going to end up being it might be, again, one of those things that's a different tangent, right? I don't know if it's going to be a book. I think what I'm comfortable with right now is I tend to write about things. So I'm about to be 60 next January. Oh my God.
60.
Yeah, oh my God, right? What the hell does that mean anyway, right? It's just a number. But
Well, that means a lot.
just say it.
That means
60.
a lot because at this,
how old are you, Paul?
Older than 60.
Okay, and how old do you feel?
Older than Pascal.
No. How old do you feel? Come on, seriously.
I usually feel pretty young.
Come on. How old do you feel? Throw a number.
My head is always in the 30s.
Okay, so you're in the 30s, like 35, 36 maybe?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. How old do you feel? How old are you, Pascal?
oh, I'm 70.
See how I told you I was going to turn this into where I'm the hosting? Okay, so you're 70. Okay. And how old do you feel?
Well, physically, I feel old, but mentally and inside
How old does your spirit feel?
my spirit, I have some still in 30s.
30s?
Yeah.
Like mid-30s?
Mid 30s, 40, because 40,
Maybe 40?
40 you already have experience of life.
Okay, so
No.
okay, that's good. Good. So you have that layer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree. It's about the same, right? So I'm about to be 60. I don't feel 60. I haven't felt 60. I haven't felt 50 until he told me to do a show, and then I really felt 50. But I think I have a little bit of interest in being introspective. So sometimes something will trigger me with that, or something I'll encounter that, or something like I said. I shared that thing about friendship. What my friend Razi told me a couple of years ago. I think I like the idea of sharing that. Not sort of in a pat your back kind of thing, but it's just kind of like, here's my thoughts kind of thing, right? And I think that's why I just used the working title. It says, it's the Rad Life. I kind of debated, like, what should it be called? And it was like the Rad Life, Lessons from the Road. I mean, it's just as plain as that, on the journey of life. And I think I'll continue to do that. And then, if it ends up being where we have a lot of them or something, then that's kind of a book formulated on its own. It could end up being where it's just almost like a title placeholder when, and I share under that, One of the things I will try to do, because I think it would be fun to do, is I don't know if you guys remember, we had twice actually. I had him on remotely one day, and a couple of years ago we had him on Joe Burke. Do you remember Joe Burke?
I do.
And Joe had written a book. Joe is the inventor for the Ollie ball, which is
Right.
an amazing award-winning inflatable ball that you blow, inflate, and then you can play inside the house, soccer, whatever. You can bounce it against glass, whatever. It's a multi-year award-winning. So shout out to Joe Burke, my buddy. And Joe wanted to write a book, and he used to work for Disney. He used to run their
Stores.
the marketing for their stores, and really smart, sharp guy. And he wanted to write a book, and he kind of put himself under the gun and said, "I'm going to write this book, and I'm going to write it by then." And he got on a train, and he rode the train up and down the coast, and wrote the book while he was on the train. So of course, when I posted this thing today, what do you think? Who do you think put my feet to the fire?
There you go.
Joe Burke put my feet to the fire. Thanks, Joe.
Get on the road.
And he's like, well, so when's this coming out? What's happening? When's the launch? I'm like, okay, right? I said, okay. So I said, I don't know, but I think I may need to do a trip, like a train trip. I think we now have the Joe Burke School of Book Writing. It's called Get on a Train
Yeah.
and Write a Book, right?
Can I join you?
Yes,
Because
I
need
think,
to-
you know, the more I think about this, I think the more Joe and I are going to basically have a bunch of people get on a train
Just ride
and
around.
ride around and write books.
I need to finish my book too.
I think, so Joe Pascal will come with us. So
right.
I think we've got something going on here. Throw in a little bit of
Yeah.
food pairing from Chef Pascal, and we're good, man. I think we can sell tickets to this.
I don't know if you know this, but Alex Haley, who wrote Roots
Yeah.
and other books, supposedly would get on a freighter because there was nothing else to do. Slowly go.
Ooh,
from
Joe, are you hearing this? I think we may
Freighter.
have a new business, you and I. Anyway, so I'm talking to him today on LinkedIn, and I say, yeah, I think there's a train trip. Maybe I have a train trip, and I you know, I looked, and I've always wanted to do, because when I was in
Let's go to Seattle.
well, I was in Istanbul. No. I was going to see, when I was in Istanbul, I saw the train from the Istanbul station.
Orient Express.
Orient Express,
Oh.
the original route of the Orient
Wow,
Express,
okay.
from Istanbul to Paris.
A big trip.
From
Yeah.
Istanbul to Paris, right?
Right.
And you're stopping in Venice, you're stopping in Sofia,
The Orient,
in Prague,
Orient Express.
Or anytime
no?
a cow wanders
Orient
onto the
Express.
railway. Yeah.
huh?
The Orient Express.
The Orient Express.
Yeah,
This is the
famous.
original route of the Orient Express. I don't know if the Orient Express still runs that route, because they also have another one that starts in Athens and goes up to, I think, to England. But this is the original route of the Orient Express. And it was the same route that actually Ottoman prisoners in World War I who were held in Paris, in Europe, took it back to get to Istanbul. So I actually went to the station in Istanbul. So there's your thing about culture. It's like, oh, well, I'm going to get on a train. I'll go to Istanbul and I'll do the trip, and it's 5 cities. And if 5 cities or 7 cities, that makes it a week. And if there's one day in each city, in order to get inspiration for whatever chapter you're writing, that's a 2-week Orient Express book
If
tour.
I can play with the words, I think that train is back on track. Is back on.
Well, the Orient Express is
It's back on
is
track.
back on track, back running.
Yeah.
And in fact, the company I worked for in Atlanta, Hirsch Bedner and Associates, were involved in some of the interiors on some of the plush, because it's a very luxury right. Anyway, so I mentioned that to Joe, and he didn't respond to my suggestion of the Orient Express. Okay, he sent me the one, and I thought he was going to send me one like it was like the Metro Link in Los Angeles or something, right? Or like the subway in New York, or maybe we're just going to ride the tube in London, which would be okay too. But he sent me one about the Rockies.
Yes, there's one.
It was a train ride in the Rockies, and because I said, isn't it time for Joe to write book number 2? And then he said, well, I'm thinking about this one. So
The train I've always wanted to take was through Canada. You start on one end of Canada and you ride all the way across.
yeah, but you
Canada.
see, this is but we have to take time to
Yeah.
do these things.
Yeah. Sure.
That's
We
why
have
I
to
can't
take
do it.
time
Can't
to
do
do
it.
these things.
Can't
right?
do it.
Yes, you can. You just choose not to. Don't give me that crap.
Can't do it.
I mean, it's going to sound like your father. Don't tell me you can't.
Thanks, Dad.
Yeah, you're welcome. Anytime, son. But that's sort of the thing with the book. I think I like the idea of it being sort of a depository of thoughts, and if it
Did you say suppository?
no, that's you. That's your book. Paul's book will be about the suppository of podcasting.
What comes out?
What comes out when it's not intended.
That's right.
Okay. On that note, I think do you want to take us out, Mr.
Yeah, I think it's time to
Pascal?
wrap it up.
I think so. I had a quick question. It's
Oh, Pascal, you're killing me.
totally different.
What are you talking about? You're enjoying yourself.
Killing
And
me.
we no, because it's different part of life. I wanted
This is the
to-
best show you have on your station. What are you talking about?
I
It's the
wanted
one
to-
show
You keep
without
telling me that. Are you lying to
just
me?
wanders
I was
along.
curious because on one of the last show we were asked, are you a cat man or a dog man? But if you were a professional,
I don't know. It depends how well they treat me.
yeah,
In Turkey was a frogman.
Grip it.
if you were a professional sportman, what sport would you be?
That's a good question. God, that's difficult, man, because you're talking to somebody that really enjoys variety and gets bored with mundane. That's not to say that I'm not consistent or solid, but it's just there's that curiosity factor.
Well, there's a competition part. Still, you're professional.
I think he'd excel. I think he'd really revel in curling?
He's still too young
Oh,
for that.
sorry, I don't have the swing for it.
Curling. You push this
No,
thing down the ice.
In fact, shout out to Mike Cassidy and his wife that do curling.
They really? Oh,
Yes,
my God.
Mike
This is
Cassidy
cool,
from
actually. I know,
California.
that's
Hey,
really-
Mike,
Very slow.
if you guys need a fill-in for curling, I'd love to take that on because seems Paul thinks I could be a
Very
good one.
slow, and you're trying to
I
watch
take my
it.
time.
Would you be
Okay, but why curling? Why not like bocce ball or
Bocce
why
ball,
not
same thing.
pétanque?
Yeah, pétanque, French. Right. Okay. So you think I should do curling?
I think you should do curling.
What do you think I should do?
It's cool.
Do you like golf?
God, do you see how I'm avoiding the answer?
Yeah.
Do you like
No,
golf?
he's not a
You
golfer.
like golf?
I do like golf, but it's obviously frustrating as hell, right? I do like the company of people during golf. Like I like the smoking the cigar and drinking a couple of beers. I really don't care about. I'm not competitive in golf.
Okay. Are you a team player?
Yeah, in fact, when I played soccer, I enjoyed playing soccer as the goalkeeper.
There you go. I was to say that.
You know, I like being the goalkeeper. I was first to admit that I had two left feet and I was going to trip on myself if I was trying to be a striker. Shout out to my nephew, who's a great defensive back, and I wish he continues to play in Concordia. The coach at Concordia, if you're listening, play my nephew Nadim, man. He didn't play enough at J. Sarah, and he's a great player. Don't make me have to come and interview you. But I would say, like I enjoy soccer. I enjoy football, American football, but it's not really my game.
I'm surprised you don't want.
Baseball is I'm in it for the hot dogs and the
you're
beer.
not thinking about winter sport. Could you spend time in Switzerland?
Curling.
So I'll tell you what
Ice.
I'll tell you what I enjoy
Cool.
and I think I would like, and it's sort of in a competitive way. I actually like skeet shooting. I like target
I love
practice,
that.
right? I even like archery. I've done archery. As far as like sports that I enjoy, and I've done, I like rock climbing. Not like crazy free climbing, but like rock climbing. I really enjoyed that. I did that for a couple of years every Sunday on Point Doom in Malibu.
Is it like a connection with nature?
It's a connection with nature, but it's also there's a thing about rope climbing. I mean, if anybody ever thinks that they want to marry somebody, or is there a possibility for a partnership relationship, in terms of business or whatever, you want to know if the person you're dealing with is somebody that you can actually see yourself in that situation with. Go rock climbing. Go rock climbing and have that person be either they're the ones climbing and you're on the belay rope, or they're on the belay rope and you're climbing, because you can't fake that I can't trust you
Yeah.
in a situation like that.
Or you
Right?
leave the road
Right,
go.
right. And they may catch you, but if they're basically doing something else and you're climbing and they're, it's really I know it's funny, but it's so true, right? Rock climbing. But I also like rock climbing because it's more of an agility thing versus just a mass and brawn. So I like rock climbing. I really like scuba diving. I do a good amount of that. I've gotten back into swimming because when I was in Turkey, literally, everything we needed to decide on a daily basis on terms of being on that boat for a week was when is lunch, when is dinner, and the rest of the time we just jumped in the Mediterranean 4 times a day and swam around the boat, and then stepped outside and had a coffee and or a little bit of uzu raki and what they call raki in Turkey, or Turkish coffee, or so swimming, I like that. And I think as I get older, it's just part of basically that regiment of wellness and maintenance. So I don't oh my God, I'm going to actually say this on the open air. I just bought an electric bike.
Oh, he did it. He did it. There it is.
I bought an electric bike
Yeah.
because it came with Bluetooth speakers and GPS.
Yeah, which you need. Got to have Bluetooth speakers.
and an automatically self-adapting AI motor
Yeah,
thing. So
gotta have that.
I bought it because I was curious, more so than because I need to be in a rascal or a motorized vehicle. But no, I think I like being outside. We're lucky to have good weather and being able to be outside. And I think again, similar to what I was talking about, like I notice a lot of people trying to do all this stuff and be on the phone all the time. Like I go to the gym, there are people on their treadmill, they're on their phone. They're not just listening to music, they're on their phone. They're communicating, they're talking, they're emailing. Again,
I know
take the time, man,
I
to
know
be
you-
present in what you're doing.
You're talking to nature because the way you craft your backyard and your front yard, you are communicating with nature. You love to do that.
Yeah, I spent a good amount of this morning basically just making sure that I fed some of the plants the different foods that I wanted to do. I planted some additional, fruits that I wanted to have in the garden, some herbs at the barbecue area.
Oh, herbs. I heard herbs.
Herbs, yeah.
That'd be
What do you call them? Herbs?
No, I'm
Herb's a guy.
little Mary Jane.
No, but we can. I mean, in California, I think I can grow that now.
Okay.
For medicinal purposes, for personal use. Yeah, no, I think the garden is actually an interesting one. I don't want to go down this path too long, but the garden, I always talk to people and say, okay, what kind of garden do you think you have, or do you think you would have, or
A
want,
garden
right?
can represent your mind.
I think it does, and I think if I look at somebody's garden, it gives me, and I'm talking about like somebody's garden, not something that they've just purchased like from a friggin' catalog and threw in, right? Although that tells you something about the homeowner too, but I think if you look at somebody's garden, it gives you insight into them.
Yeah,
Right.
It's your own piece of paradise.
Well, yeah, and how is it structured? How is it organized? I will be the first to tell you. First of all, the garden that you're talking about is in what was my parents' house, what was the family home, right, that I am in now. And so I feel like I'm basically in a stewardship position, in a custodian position, a curator, if you will, right, of the house. And the garden was something that was my mother's kind of more than my dad's, but it wasn't really dialed in completely. Like they didn't use a lot of the outside spaces, so I kind of engaged those because I like that. It causes me to actually have to go and do that and be outside. But the garden is not symmetrical.
No.
It's not organized, overly organized, right? It's more organic. It's more.
It's not. You mean it's
kinda-
not in a straight line like your life has
Well,
been?
to go to your philosophy,
Well, that's the observation I was trying to point out, Paul. Is that it works. It
Meanders.
provides that there's different zones in the garden.
Meanders.
and to go back to your philosophy.
I mean, you've been there. Why don't you
Well,
reflect? Why don't you give me your impression?
You can tell.
You've been there too.
And we have something in common because we realize that each plant has its own needs, and you communicate with the plants, and the plants are going to remind you what they need and when they need it.
Well, don't you feel that relationships in many ways are the same as basically
That's why
taking
I'm
care of a garden?
getting there, and that's why going back to community, the same thing.
Well, I think there's again, it goes back to that time. You need time. You can't just garden, by pushing a button.
No.
You can't really. I mean, you can sustain the lifespan of a plant, but is it going to really bloom? Is it going to really do any of that stuff without complications, without your attention?
You
No.
learn it.
Yeah, I think again, a lot of relationships suffer these days because there's not enough room and clarity that part of it's not work, it's maintenance. Like you need to just basically be aware that if you want that blooming garden of your relationships, blooming garden of your life,
You can listen to your plant.
that you can't just basically just water it. You got to listen to what it's telling you. You got to adjust to it. You got to try to bring the best out of it, but at the same time also recognize that it is the nature of what it is. You can't make it something else.
Well,
right.
I'd like to make this the end, if I could. I think there's so
Well,
much we've learned. I have to digest it. No more questions.
The Raad life is a long life.
It's a long life. It's a long story. It takes. I'm always wondering, is he going to get to the point?
Are you saying I should be off the air? Are you canceling the show?
No. I'm just looking for You wander through the show finding the point, and then you always find a way to bring it to the point.
That's what you have always said that to me, okay? And the tone in your voice when you say it, by the way, is a combination, right? There's an honest in recognizing that we've once again brought it around to the point, right?
It is.
And there's another part that's basically his sense of frustration with the fact that it had to go through that process.
It had to go through a story is supposed to be beginning, middle, and end. It's
But
structured.
Nobody say we cannot do that again.
Well, look, I just want to say thank you guys. This was fun. It's totally different when you're sitting in the chair, and not really asking questions.
But
Pascal,
thank you. You know
very well
you
done.
know where
Bravo.
the idea came from? My wife.
Mm.
She wanted to know more about you because she said, I want to know why.
She probably knows more than she ever wanted
Why
to know.
why
my God,
my
I didn't-
husband is spending 2 hours for a coffee with this guy.
Yeah.
Who's
exactly.
this guy? Well, you should bring her along next time.
Okay.
But well done, my friend. Really, really nice. I mean, I don't have a reference point other than when I'm on some of the other shows, but to me, on my own show, and for you guys to basically tag team me, Paul. By the way, thank you for going easy on me a little bit.
Yeah,
too.
well, it's the Rad life.
Yeah, we didn't want to know some of the
Rad
sides.
life.
No, it's good. So yeah, this is part of the.
We laughed,
Thank
we
you.
cried, we shared a little time, we drank a little coffee.
And I want to just put the word out to everybody that's been on the show. Honestly, I know you guys are very kind with your comments, and you reached out, and it was really. By the way, thank you for all the really supportive and nice comments today with the book thing. It really means a lot. But I really want you guys to reach out to us, whether we're on the air. I mean, we've been saying this for 9 years. People, come on, pick up the phone and call, right? But reach out to us. Even after the show, let us know.
Instagram too.
Yeah, Instagram. But I mean, if you call us, then we talk to you. We hear your voice. You hear ours. We're in the now versus I'm reading your text. But we'd really love to hear from you.
And they have to tell you their friend as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
But most
look,
importantly,
Pascal is looking for you guys to engage. I mean, I don't want to send Pascal after you, right? Because,
Please do.
he'll come for coffee for 2 hours. But thanks, guys. Really, it was a lot of fun, and thanks everybody for listening. I hope you got some answers, and if you have any more questions, just reach out to us. Thank you, buddy.
All right. See you.
I appreciate you.
Oh, thanks for coming.
Yeah, thank you.